Sure, we're all geniuses.
All right, so the first thing we're talking about tonight is going to be pitching at different stages. So the first one is pitching an idea. So if you are pitching an idea, then you are trying to get someone involved with your project and either help fund it or help develop the script or be involved with it in some way, like a producer or something. It could be producers. You might be trying to get a director on board if you're the script writer or the producer of that. Co-writers, if you're trying to get somebody to help write it or ghost write it or something like that. Studio executives or network executives, or some other crew member that you're trying to get involved with this project. If you only have the idea, then you haven't written the script yet. So this is just the very first stage. You have an idea in your head, you're trying to pitch it to somebody. Since you have nothing but an idea, it's going to be a harder sell. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but if you don't have an outline, a treatment, or a script, and all you have is the idea, then the people you are pitching to have nothing else to go off of, don't know your writing style or talent, and don't get a glimpse of your work or your work ethic really either, because they don't really know how hard you're going to work or if you're going to be flaky, because all you have is an idea, and it's kind of hard to tell how somebody's going to work or how passionate someone's going to be about that idea just because they have an idea. So it's a lot harder of a sell. So letter A of the syllabus from Film Courage, the guy said a general rule for all kinds of pitches. He gave a rule of 3 before pitching to someone in a social setting. So unless they inquire about it, don't pitch it to them the first moment you meet them. If you see them again, you may want to hold off on pitching again, unless inquired about it, of course, unless they're asking you about, oh, what are you working on, or what ideas do you have, or whatever, then go ahead and tell them. But if you meet them a third time, that's when you might maybe want to give an unsolicited pitch, basically an unasked for pitch, because now they're a little bit more familiar with you, they know you a little better, and so that's the time to do the pitch. And he's basically talking about what we talked about earlier in the semester, elevator pitches, and like the best time to do them. And it's when somebody asks, or after you've met them or run into them a few times before you just pitch to them, hey, you're a producer, right? Blah, 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 blah. Because that just hardly ever works. So you really want to not push your ideas or your script or your finished film onto people that aren't really wanting it, especially in a social setting, like if they're sitting down at dinner. You want to be aware of the situation. Anyway, Scott, I think it's scottbirkin.com, it's letter B in the syllabus. Under the idea, right there. All right, so coming up with ideas is already hard enough, but convincing others to do something with them is much harder. So be sure to create and refine your idea. Don't pitch an idea before it's ready. So if you have an idea for what a film might be, or what a TV show could be, really think about it. Really think of what could work, what couldn't work. Don't just come up with an idea and then give it to somebody. Think about the idea, refine the idea, and make sure it's an actually good idea that can work for a film or that can work for a TV show before you even try to pitch it.
And if it can work, how would that pitch initially go, or what parts of the idea you should focus on when pitching is also really important.
Yeah, because everybody comes up with ideas, but they don't know how, one, they don't know how to communicate them to other people. 2, just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's something that can actually work on paper or in a film or a TV show. And just because you have the idea doesn't mean that it's easy to execute or easy to finance or easy to do, so it's not just as easy. That's why a lot of people are like, oh, I have these ideas, I wish I could do something with them. You have to actually try to do something with them, but the way you do that is refining it and figuring out what works, what doesn't logistically before just spitting out the idea to somebody that come to your head.
Because the first thing that they're going to ask you is, well, how would you go about this? What did you have in mind for this? If it's like something that needs a concept or something that needs to be built.
Yeah, because you have to think about it. You don't have a script. You don't really have if you don't have the other elements to it, which hope, you could with an idea, you could have like a treatment, or you could have something that isn't the script, like a step before the script, which will help. But if you don't have that stuff, then you really need to be able to answer questions about how things would work based on your idea. So you really have to think about stuff before just going out and telling your idea to people. If you're trying to actually get them involved in some way, know what your idea is before you pitch it. Also, what is the scope of the idea? How many locations will it need? Special or visual effects? Is it very visual effects heavy? Because that's obviously going to change the scope of it and how much it's going to cost to make it. Actors, how many actors will it need? What actors are you thinking maybe might be involved in this project or might be interested in being involved in it? How many would it need? How many actors would it need as well? Is it achievable? Is it something that can actually be done, or is it some grand scheme scope that is far beyond the reach of whoever you're pitching it to? And what would the budget be? How much would this thing cost? What's the general idea? Obviously, you might not know all of these things verbatim, but if you have an idea, that's why you have to refine it and kind of figure out these questions before you just dump it on somebody. Because you may have the idea for a 6-hour-long epic film, but how likely is it that you would actually be able to get that done, or that whoever you're pitching it to might actually be able to get that done? Also note that the more different your idea is from the standard lengths, story structure, and other standards of the industry, the harder the sale is going to be, because it's unknown if something like that will work. It can't be too close to something else, because then it's like, well, that's just that. But it also can't be too different. I mean, it can, but it's a really harder sell if it's too different to the point where it's like, doesn't follow any of the rules. Those rules are there for a reason. It's usually because they have worked
Or if you
at
don't
one
have a
time
good
or
enough
another.
reason to why they don't follow those rules. Because sometimes if you have a good enough reason, it makes sense. But
that's why, yeah, and that's another thing. If you have a good reason for why it needs to be different in some way, it has to be this 6-hour-long epic. And here's why. And it makes sense. And you've thought about it, but then you can pitch it to them, and hopefully they pick up on your passion for it and understand. But that's meaning that you thought about it beforehand, that you refine this idea in your head of how this would work and why it needs to be this way instead of the standard. Arden said, so not too cliche, but also safe enough to be profitable. Basically, yeah, like if it's too far off from the standard and the norm, then, I mean, it's not impossible, because, there's stuff that like Blair Witch Project came out
just
and
need to
nobody
know how to
did a
pitch
found
it.
footage film like that. But it's not like they were trying to do a super different length of a film, like way shorter or way longer.
At the end of the day, it's about how you pitch it, but it's also about timing, and that's the main thing. Like, you can pitch a unique idea or a super different idea, but if the timing's not right, you can have the best pitch ever if the timing's not right. Or you can have great timing, but if your pitch isn't right, it also ruins. So it's a lot about who you pitch it to, how you're pitching it, and hopefully the timing's right. Unfortunately, that is something that we also have to look at in this space, which kind of sucks.
But yeah, it's basically, it basically boils down mainly to the fact it has to be unique enough to be like, why is this something that needs to be made if something exactly like it has already been made? Well, mine's set apart because of this, that, and that. My idea of this, oh, the character in this is this. He's a dad raising this kind of kid with that kind of stuff, whatever. Something's different about the story that hasn't been done exactly the same before. And they're in this setting that may have been done before, but with the characters different, we're going to get a different view on that kind of situation. And then, and like I said, like just not different so much that it's completely unlike anything else, because most people in the industry like some kind of structure, like some kind of standard, And if you go against that standard, it's okay. But like I said, the more of those standards that you start to go against, the harder it is to get people on board because they're just not sure if it's going to work.
One
It's
good
not
thing
sure.
that everyone that has done something beyond the standard talks about is you can go beyond the standard. but
Not
you
in
have to-
everything. I
Let,
gotta
let
get
me
this in.
finish. Let me
All right,
finish.
good.
But oh right, not in everything, obviously. But I'm talking about if you want to do an out there movie or a different concept or something like that, you have to pace yourself and you have to take your time. Like George Lucas worked on a project before Star Wars that they wanted him to work on so that he could get his foot in the door and pitch Star Wars. You know, that was something unique and different and out of the box. But he had to pace himself. He had to first do that more safe project, and then he got a foot in the door and he met people and he got connections in order to pitch his crazy idea. His, like, at the time, crazy idea. So at the end of the day, don't be discouraged if your like super unique idea doesn't come off the bat. Like sometimes it's the way you're pitching it, sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's just a matter of you can do that project in the future. You know, I forgot the name of the director, but that famous horror director and writer that did Hill House and now did Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass was a project that he was working on for 10 years. That he was pitching everywhere, and no one wanted to take it yet. But he paid his dues, he did his projects, and he was able to pitch the project. So that doesn't mean that it's dead in the water, like it's going to be dead forever. It just means that a lot of work needs to go into it.
Yeah, but specifically for pitching, it's like if you have an idea that you want to pitch, just know what the idea is. And when I'm talking about going against the norm, I'm not just talking about the story idea, because the story idea can be different. It can be a different concept on the story. That's one thing that's against the norm of story structure. But also you might say like, oh, I want it to be a super long film. They've done it. It's just not normal. And there's a reason, because it's harder to sell and it's harder to get people, it's harder to get theaters involved. So if you're like, oh, it has to be 3 hours, it has to be 4 hours, whatever, that's going to also go against the normal length of a movie. That would be another thing. And then if it's like, also, how do you plan to market this? How do you plan to distribute this? Oh, we're going to distribute it through NFTs. That's something that's also very different right now. It could be one of the things that takes it off and makes it go huge, but it's something brand new that people haven't really tried as much yet.
Hesitant about.
And so they'd be hesitant. So if you're trying to go against all three of those things at once, that's what I'm talking about. Like it'd be a much harder sell because you're going against all of the standard norms in the industry.
You also have to be very realistic with yourself and with the person you're pitching it to, that if you're going to do a 4-hour epic, you need to know that there's not going to be as many viewings. It's not going to be able to have as many showings. It's going to be a more niche audience. You know, that is something that you have to be prepared for as well. Like the limitations of your project, of the project that you are pitching, be realistic and acknowledge them, offer solutions, obviously, and offer compromises, which is very important, but just be realistic. Don't go into it thinking, oh, it's going to work out. You have to be able to show the investor, I've thought of this, I have a plan, but at the end of the day, I know that it's not going to be exactly like a regular 2-hour film or 1 hour 45 minute film, for example.
Well, the other thing is we're talking about specifically about pitching ideas. And so you might not even be pitching to an investor. You might be, but you might be pitching to somebody like a producer. I want you to produce this. I want you to get me help pitching it to other people. I want the director. I've heard you direct films like this. I have an idea for one, and I think you'd be a great director on it. I'm trying to pitch this to you. Or I want to write this script, but I'm not very good at script writing. I want to hire you to write this idea for me, or I want you to work with me on this project and believe in it. And then you're pitching it to a screenwriter. So, you might be pitching it to these other people, but you have to know what the idea is and be able to pitch it to them. And the more you go against those norms, the more they're going to be hesitant to do it because they know how the business works. You also want to think about who has the power to greenlight the idea. You know, if nobody else, can you do it all on your own? Because if so, that's the best position to be in. If not, can a peer do it? Somebody you know really closely, can they do it? That's good because you already have an in. Is it your boss or somebody above you at work or at one of your jobs you've worked at before? Someone you know but don't really have easy access to? That's a little bit harder because you don't have easy access to, but at least you know them. Is it a friend of a friend? Someone you don't know, but you have sort of an in through another person? Or is it someone you don't know and you don't have easy access to? Someone you're going to have to really fight to get in touch with in the first place? Or do you just have no idea? Each of these will make it harder or easier to pitch your idea to those individuals based on who they are to you, and more importantly, who you are to them. Pitches can always be adjusted. So know who you're pitching to and adjust the pitch to show the parts of the idea that person or group will care about most.
I would
You're
even say it
pitching-
should be adjusted depending on who, like if you're presenting it to completely different companies, production companies, to completely different people that have different tastes, like different parts of your film. Your film has different aspects to it, kind of like when we were studying that independent film.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're pitching it to a screenwriter, they probably only care about the story. I mean, they might care about more than that, but the main thing they'll probably care about is the story. If you're pitching it to a producer, they're probably going to care about the logistics a little bit more. And like, how is this going to work? How much is this going to cost? Who would we have to get involved? How hard is this going to be to get done? And then a director, they might care more about the story and about, you know, who you have producing it, who has an in with actors and whatever else, and how big is this going to be? No, not that.
I didn't know it was making that much sense.
But just be sure to have a structure to your pitch, even just for ideas. You still want to have structure and you want to be able to adjust it to show the parts of those ideas that that person or group will care about the most. Have varying pitches ready. Also, when you have an idea, try to have multiple ideas. That way, with ideas, you can make a 1-sentence pitch, a 30-second pitch, and a 5-minute pitch. If you hook them with a 1-sentence pitch, you can branch off into the 30-second pitch and further to give them a little bit more details if they're interested. One good thing about pitching ideas is that you can have multiple ideas at once, and they're really quick to go by sometimes. So if you have a person's attention, but they maybe don't like the idea that you're telling them, you can tell them about a new idea. Oh, well, I also have this idea. And you can see if one of those will hook them. So maybe they're listening, they're interested in what you have to say, but they're kind of like, that we don't really do those kind of films, or I don't really care about that kind of genre. Oh, well, I also have, you know, this other one in this genre, and here's what this is about. And then if they get interested in that, that's all the better. So that's one good thing about pitching ideas, is that it's a lot quicker, so you have a lot more adaptability to it.
There are a lot of cases where people say like, oh, they've contacted me because they liked the way I wrote something, the way I pitched something. They liked the way my brain worked, but that idea in particular didn't interest them or wasn't something that they normally do. So but they were still interested in me. So they asked what else I had, you know, and that was a big in for a lot of people.
Yeah. So if you get interest in the idea, depending on who you're pitching it to, they may ask for a treatment or a full script or other documents to help them see the idea when it's more fleshed out. Or you may start discussions on writing and how it will be written, who will write it, what the structure will be, especially if you're talking to a co-writer. You're gonna have to figure out, how are we co-writing this? Who's writing this part? Who's writing that? Are we gonna sit together and write it? Are we gonna take half the script, certain scenes, whatever? How are we doing this? And you'll also need to put a schedule or a deadline in place for when things need to be done. So if somebody's interested, they'll say, hey, all right, I like the idea. if you give me the full script next month or 2 months from now or 3 months from now or whatever, I'll look into it. And if I like the script, we can work together. If they're going to get involved with the script itself, then they might, you'd have to discuss with them how to set up a schedule with them and how it's going to work. But either way, if they like it, they'll probably ask for further stuff when it's just an idea instead of just joining in at the idea stage, especially producers, because what I've heard from producers is that they hear an idea and they like it. And when they first started out, they just joined on like a team when they had an idea, but that idea changes as the script gets written. And then sometimes the idea kind of is not really the same at the end because they realize something doesn't work, or they just started writing and they went a different way with the script. And so that idea is no longer what it originally was, which happens all the time. And that's why they don't usually like getting involved at that stage. Some people do, some people don't, but you'd find that out by pitching to them, I guess. But that's why I think it's usually a better idea to have like a treatment or have something to go in with your idea, so that it's not just an idea that's in your head, but it's something that you've thought a lot more about and you've written like a 10-page treatment or something to show that, this is kind of what it would be like. Maybe you have some concept art or something so you can illustrate your idea a little better. Now with scripts, if you're at the stage where you finished a script and you're going to pitch it, with a finished script, you already have a piece of the product you're trying to sell. At this stage, you may start by expressing the idea, but you should be able to back it up with research, data, and of course, the script itself. Can I do a PowerPoint? I don't have a PowerPoint for all this.
No. I was saying, like, can you do the pitch like as a PowerPoint?
Oh, if it's a meeting, yeah. The thing with ideas is that you're not really going to get in a meeting with it, usually.
Oh, okay.
It's usually going to be elevator pitches at that point. So it's going to be like you run into somebody and you have an idea you want to give them, or maybe you're emailing them. If you have the capability to, like, if whatever way you're contacting them, you have the ability to send them a PowerPoint. Yeah, you can totally do that. But if it's like in person, it's very rare that you're going to have. I would say it's very rare that you're going to have like a screen somewhere where you can do that with a idea. With a script and with a finished film, you actually would get the chance to maybe set up a pitch meeting where you're going to have the screen and you're going to have the ability to actually present it to them.
Oh, okay.
But when you have a script, never bring the first draft to a pitch meeting, or never send somebody a first draft of the script if they request your script. If you told them your idea, they like the idea, don't send them the first draft. You want a finalized and polished script that you have already tried to improve on your own and with feedback from others, so that you can have, they may give you feedback to change it more, but you want to have the best available story. The no errors, no spelling errors. You want to have all of the dialogue fixed and ready and pretty much as good as you can get it, or as good as you feel you can get it, before trying to pitch it to somebody to get them involved or get them to fund it in some way. If you give them the first draft, even if you say, this is the first draft, I'm going to work on the second one, you're already going to give them some kind of idea in their head of what your talent or what your writing capability is. And it'd be like showing a animatic for CGI and saying, oh yeah, I'm a really good CGI artist. Here's an animatic I'm working on. And they see like this really choppy animation. It doesn't look very good. You want to have a finalized product to show them, to show what your actual capability is, what your actual ability is.
Because more often than not, those people's areas of expertise are not the, like if it's an animation or whatever, they're good at one department of that. They're good at the writing stage, or they're good at the pitching stage or whatever. They didn't go to graphic design school or whatever school you go to. So they don't know, they can't see the potential you might be able to see.
It definitely isn't graphic design.
I don't know the name. I suck at terms, people. We know this, we've covered this anyway. But I know what things are, I just suck at the words. But basically, they might not be able to see what you see, or even if they do have knowledge of what it could be, like they're not in your head. So what they're gonna picture when seeing that raw idea, that raw script, that raw image, it might be completely different than what you have in mind too. So it's a detriment to yourself as well.
Yeah, and so you always want to try to improve your script as much as you can, get feedback from others, and then try to pitch it to people that are actually you're going to try to get involved in it in some way or fund it in some way. If you have a completed script, it means you are confident in the idea and the story. So it means that you were confident enough in this idea, you believed in this idea enough that you went out and wrote it. So that already puts you above just an idea, because it shows that you have some passion for this. You know, you had enough dedication and passion to actually write out a script for this idea. So you actually believe in this idea. When you're pitching a script, you're probably going to be pitching it to either studio and network executives, trying to get them to take on the project or produce it. Or you're going to be pitching it to investors, trying to get them to fund it. You might be pitching it to certain actors, trying to get them involved in the or attached to it, so that you can have some leverage when going to investors and networks and studios. Or you might be pitching it to producers and other above the line crew, trying to get people involved in the project. You should, at this pitching stage, also have a plan for scheduling, a preliminary budget, who your target audience is, or who you intend them to be, or who you think they are, revenue estimates for that kind of film, a finance plan, like where all your finances is coming from. Even if you're getting it from investors, what percentage of the overall budget is coming from investors? How many investors do you plan to get involved? All of that kind of stuff. A pitch deck, that you can actually use in your pitch. Possibly you want some concept art, maybe some mood boards, a lookbook. You want a distribution plan, and that could be something just, I think these distributors would be good for this project once we're done. This is or if you're going to do self-distribution, what the plan is for that, how you plan to go about it. A marketing plan, how you plan to market, what avenues you plan to take, what kind of marketing strategies you're going to use, script coverage, and more. At this stage, you really have to have a lot of different things. They're going to usually request, if they're going to have a pitch meeting with you, depending on how big the company is, they're going to request a lot of different stuff to come with that pitch, not just the script, not just the pitch deck, but a lot of different information, and you need to be ready with it. All of these tools, along with your script, make pitching a finished script easier to convince others to take it on compared to pitching an idea alone. It's harder to get done because there's a lot of work that goes into it. But because you have all that stuff covered, because you have all this research done and data, it's a lot easier to get someone convinced to do it. It's still really hard, but it's easier than just an idea. Because now the people you're pitching to have a glimpse of your talent. They can see the script. If they want, they can read it all the way through and see how good of an idea it is, if they think it is. They can also see your passion and your investment into this idea, how much you've invested your time and your effort. And they can see your professionalism and work ethic, your professionalism and how many of these things you've thought about and done beforehand, like all these different plans and estimates and all this other stuff. and your work ethic because of all of this hard work you're putting into it. And if you're pitching to multiple people, it'll get spread around. They'll know because those are pretty tight circles. And so they'll know you're pitching it around and trying here and there and there. So they'll see that your work ethic, you're constantly trying to push this idea as well. They also have research and data plus visuals to look over that may compel them to want more or to want to be a part of the project. Because you're going to have your log line, your synopsis, your title, and more will be in this pitch. And those other tools I talked about to help sell the script or project in your pitch. When you have a finished script, it will often be one of the last things you actually send to people you pitch to, because they're going to want to see the things like the log line, like the treatment, and more first before putting in all that time to read a full script. You know, full script, that could be 90 to 120 or more pages. They don't have the time to read 80 different people's 120-page script. So they have to look through the log line first. They like that, they go to the next thing, the summary or the treatment. And then they just keep going down the line until they request you to come in for a pitch meeting. And then at the pitch meeting, they like you, you leave them a lead behind, you leave, they look through it, they talk to their people above them, depending on who you're pitching to, if it's a company or something. And then they'll get back in touch with you and ask for the script and whatever else. And then they might finally actually talk about getting involved or funding it or whatever it may be. Although if you're just pitching to like an individual, they could agree on the spot and start coming up with the contracts and whatever to sign on for this project. Either way, a finished script will make pitching a lot easier if you have all these other tools and you have all of these other data points ready, because it's just a lot more information, a lot more visuals to see, and shows that you did your homework. Now, pitching a finished film, if you're pitching a finished film, then you're most likely pitching it to distributors, sales agents, or executives, normally at like some kind of streaming company or something like that. With a finished film, you can utilize key art and a trailer to help gain interest. This kind of pitch may take place mostly through email at first, when reaching out to certain people like executives or distributors, or you may be at a film market trying to sell your film. You should know your log synopsis, perhaps a tagline. You should know your target audience and more. Pretty much everything you'd know with a script pitch. If you have a finished script, you should know all of that stuff, and maybe a little more with some kind of like marketing stuff, kind of like a tagline. You'll also want an electronic press kit, production stills, maybe some scene clips, one-sheet breakdowns, business cards. Well, business cards kind of for every single stage of pitching, and more. At this stage, you may also have a website and a bit of a following on either a newsletter or social media. You may also have a clear marketing plan and know your marketable elements. You want to utilize all of those things to help sell your film. If you have any kind of following, if you have any kind of people that are subscribed to your newsletter, you want to give those numbers in your pitch, if it's no matter what it is, really, because that shows that some people are interested, that you have some kind of market that's interested in your work or interested in your thing. Pitching a finished product is the easiest out of the three because there's less risk for the people you're pitching to. They still have risk, but there's less because the film's already complete. So any production, or budget issues are no longer a factor. And your work ethic, while still crucial, isn't as important as it was before you made the film, because the film's already made. So really it's about the business relationship now. Before a film is made, they have to make sure that they have to try to count on you that you're going to get that film done. But now that it's already done, if you're pitching a film that's already finished, that's no longer a factor. So any form of pitching is still going to be very hard, regardless of what stage you're at. So you always want to be prepared, be ready, practice and rehearse it, and try to be as confident as you can. Don't come off as arrogant, but be confident. Because if you're not confident, it's going to make the pitch awkward, slow, maybe boring. And so you want to be confident and trust in your idea, plus show your passion. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything to add about pitching at those various stages? Ideas, scripts, or a finished film? Regardless of what stage you are at, it is still really difficult because you're still asking something of somebody.
Yeah.
For a finished film, you might be asking a distribution company to take on some expenses to create some marketing elements, marketing materials that they're going to help distribute your film through, or just, regular theater stuff like DCPs and whatever else to try to get it into theaters. And so you're still asking something of them, even if you already have a finished product. So regardless of what stage you're at, just know that it's still going to be really hard. But it's easier the further you get into it. All right, moving on from that, we are talking about marketing rules. These are just kind of like rules of thumb, not really set in stone. This stuff comes from Chris Heckman. It's letter A in the syllabus. It is, oops, it's this one. 60%, 30%, 10% rule of Facebook advertising. You can actually see his little face right there in the corner. With advertising and marketing, there's a few 60, 30, 10 rules. To get someone to do what you want, like buy a ticket, come to an event, buy merchandise, follow you, join a newsletter or email list, and more, you need to keep this general rule in mind. You want 100% of this whole bar. So if your campaign isn't working, you want to think about this and what piece you might need to change or do differently. Because this is called a 60, 30, 10 rule. So in marketing, one of the 60, 30, 10 rules is that for each post to be successful in what it is trying to do, it is about 60% of the audience, 30% the message or the offer, and 10% the creative or visual. If you want someone to buy a hat for your production company and you have a really nice professional photo of it and it looks really good, that's only 10% of the equation. That's the visual. That means the photo of that post is good. The actual hat, the actual thing you're trying to sell is good. All right, that's the 10%. If your offer in that case, which would be the price for the hat, is a ludicrous amount, like let's say $2,000 each, then that 10% isn't going to make up for the 30% of the offer. So 30% is the offer or the message in certain posts. 10% is the visual or the creative. Basically, the quality of the post is 10% of what will get somebody wanting to do that thing. 30% is the offer of the message. So if it's a good deal, or if it is something that aligns with their morals or their goals or whatever, which would be the message, that would be another 30% that might get them involved in it. If we price it right and we put out a good quality ad that has the right message, that's still only going to be 40% of the equation. For the other 60%, we need the audience. Specifically, we need to make sure we are targeting and reaching the right audience, our target audience, somebody who's actually going to buy this hat. That's 60% of the equation. So you have to have a good quality post, but that's only 10%. If you're targeting it to the wrong people, or if you have a ridiculous amount you're trying to ask for, it doesn't matter if it's really good quality, and it doesn't matter how good the post looks, because you aren't targeting it to the right people. The right people aren't seeing the post. So it doesn't matter how good it is. And then the other way around, if you have the right audience, but you have a really bad offer and you don't have a really good quality post, then it matters more, because you still have a chance to maybe sell that hat because you're targeting it to the right people. But because you're missing these other two parts of the equation, it's a bit harder to get them to fully commit to buying it. So you want to have all three of these things to get the best results. Because if you target the right people, you give out the right message and offer, but your quality or your creative part sucks, you'll have a hard time selling as much as you would otherwise. It's only 10%, so you probably would get some more people involved in buying it, or more people that are likely to buy it, but you'll still be missing out on the other people that see it and go, it doesn't look that good, or this is a crappy post, and they don't even stop to look at it online to read what it is. You'll still sell some if you target the right people, but without all three aspects, making them 100%, you're going to have a harder time getting what you want with the results that you probably wanted. So if you're doing a marketing campaign, or you're doing some kind of posts on social media, trying to get people involved in doing something, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be buying something. It could just be liking and sharing this post. But if it's not working, or it isn't doing as well as you thought it would, see what could be changed, or maybe what could be improved. Does your message or offer complement what you're trying to say? Could it be adapted to better resonate and engage with your audience? Are you doing anything creative with the post, and can it be improved? Is the quality of the visuals, the text, and the writing, is it no spells checked? I mean, no mistakes in spelling, and no grammar mistakes. Is it quality, and does it sound good? Is it easy to read? Does it have quality photos, sounds, clips, and more? Are they high quality or poor quality? If it's poor quality on any of those, obviously, try to improve those as best you can. And then, are you reaching the right people, or do you need to reevaluate who your target audience is? So if it's not reaching anybody, then you're probably not targeting the right people. So you have to reevaluate that. This next stuff comes from Jesse Showalter, I think. It's letter B in the syllabus, 60-30-10 color rule. We talked about this one before. But you have a 60-30-10 color rule that also applies to many things in marketing, because a lot of graphics will be made. Either the way you set up a post, a website, a picture. They're all supposed to have these like 60-30, not exactly, but 60-30-10 rule is just a general rule of thumb to kind of give it a clean, professional look. If you're running a newsletter, same thing. You're going to be using these rules to help it look professional, help it look good. It's the 60-30-10 rule of color is 60% should be the primary colors or color. 30% should be the secondary color or colors. and 10% should be the accent color or colors. So you have the majority of the post, the majority of the page, the majority of the picture, whatever it may be, all taken up with one, maybe two different colors that make up about 60% of the whole thing. Then you have 30% taken up by another color, or maybe two. And then you have 10% taken up by another color. Probably not two at that point. You don't want too many colors in your post, but 60, 30, 10 just means that the majority should be one or two colors. 30% should be one or two colors, and the other 10%, like maybe a button or just an outline of something, should be a different color, just to give it a little bit of an accent. This next stuff comes from lightspeedhq.com. It's letter F in the syllabus. So another advertising or marketing 60-30-10 rule is that 60% of the content you post on social media should be engaging content that gets people reacting, commenting, and sharing. 30% should be shared content. Hold on, let me open this. There we go. Should be shared content from other places, other sources, external, pages that have to do with your film or your company or whatever you're posting for. I've seen plenty of stuff that we put in the syllabus. They take from each other's posts on their social media sometimes. And they're like, if it's a no film school, they might take something from Studio Binder and post it on their page like, oh, Studio Binder just said this. This is what we think about this. And that's the external shared content. They're sharing somebody else's posts, but it has to do with their stuff still. And then 60% is just trying to get people engaged with their content. It's like, oh, what do you guys think of this? Comment below what this is, or, we have these two colors. Which do you think is the better primary and secondary colors for this color scheme? Blah, 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 blah. Trying to get people to comment on it, share it, like it, whatever. They're trying to get people to engage with it. And then 10% of your content should be promotional. Promoting your film, promoting any kind of sales events you have or services. If you do more than 10%, it starts to get pretty spammy and makes people not really want to follow the accounts, which is why this general rule of thumb is out there. They don't, it seems kind of counterintuitive to not promote yourself all the time, but it just doesn't work. And that's why they came out with these rules, because people won't follow an account that only talks about sales and merchandise and we're promoting ourselves here and we're promoting ourselves there, because it's just like, it gets old. It's like, okay, I get it. You just want me to buy something, or you just want me to do something for you.
It also ruins the connection you have, because if you want to connect with your fan base, if you want to connect with people that you think might be interested in what you have to offer, to keep constantly treating them like solely customers isn't the way to go. You're supposed to treat them like, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. This is why you should be too, or whatever. Like, so social media especially, or like different platforms have different, like, there's obviously a balance between the whole parasocial relationship with which is a whole other extreme, and just treating them like, hey, buy my merchandise. But the best way you get people to care and to invest in your projects is by allowing them to relate to it, to feel a connection to it, to feel interested by it in some way, and not just feel like, hey, the only value you have to me is if you buy my stuff. So buy my stuff or get out.
Yeah, because the whole point of social media accounts and for businesses is trying to get people involved in a kind of community that is like talking about this thing, or that is interested in this aspect of something. Oh, I'm interested in clothing, so I follow this clothing brand because they make interesting clothing points. They share their stuff, of course, when they come out with a new product, but they also talk about clothing in general, fashion.
There's actually a really good example. Like, I don't buy all the clothes I see on certain websites, but I like that certain pages I follow on Instagram, they are fashion brands, or they're just even secondhand stores that I follow. They will post things related to fashion, things related to what's hot right now, different ideas and how to style things, like different tips on how to wear, how to care for outfits. That's always really entertaining and fun. It makes me want to follow them more. And not
Yeah,
just
that would be
follow
their
someone.
that would be their probably their engaging content. So if they're trying to get people engaged with their brand, engaged with their social media accounts and their posts, so that the posts get spread throughout that social media platform even further to reach more people. But yeah, that's the general rule of thumb. If the shared content, that could be from followers. You could also post people that follow you, some of their content. Like, oh wow, one of our followers decided to make a poster for our film, or just drew the character.
Oh yeah, people
I've
post
seen
fan
that all
art
the
all
time.
the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this is what a fan created, and writers, book writers do that. Different movie writers do that as well. I've seen even like different, even actors will post like different fan art of the movies they've been in.
And that gets more people to do it. So it's like cool. It's like cool, and it helps two things in one. So it's the external, but it's also kind of the engaging part. So it's like a bit of that, but it could be from your followers if they do anything that's related to your stuff, or they're another filmmaker, they're coming out with their own film, or they're doing something for your film.
Oh, yeah, especially if you're an independent filmmaker, you can give tips on how you got funding, what kind of camera you use, how the process of the filming day was, like just little stuff like that to make them feel engaged and connected, but also like they're learning something. Like they're getting something out of this transaction. It's not just them giving to you, but you're giving to them as well.
Yeah. It says it right here, actually. 60% of your content should be engaging. The goal of this content should be to inform, entertain, educate, or otherwise engage your audience. And then 30% from the shared content from external sources. Whilst your own content should always take priority, including external content is vital. It shows that you're not all about you, me. It shows that you actually pay attention to other people, and that you kind of give a shout out to other people when you feel like they have something worth posting or worth noting. So it could be, again, from your followers for the shared content. It could be from influencers, somebody who talks about film a lot or reviews it. It could just be that you're sending them somewhere else, but you're sharing it with your audience. And it has something to do with your content, your film, you as a creator, or whatever. But this mix, doing this kind of mix on social media, allows your content to have a healthy balance between inspirational, informational, engaging, and promotional. You don't want to just be promotional all the time, or people won't really want to follow you. Also, you don't have to follow these 60, 30, 10 rules to a T, but keep them in mind, as they'll become super useful for quick evaluations on what you could do differently or improve on. Especially if something doesn't look good, you could think about the 60, 30, 10 rule of color. I was actually going to look up some. I was going to show just like a quick website or something of, and you can see like the 60, 30, 10 rule. A lot of websites use white, of course, because it takes up the most of the screen. And then they might make, it doesn't have to be too far off from the other color, but you can see that the 30% is up here, the 60% is all the posts and the buttons, and the 10% is just these little accents to give pop to certain things like join or the calls to action. Same thing right here. We can see the same, actually pretty much the same color scheme. 60% is white, 30% is that dark blue, and the 10% is these little tiny buttons. Although I would say this is kind of off because the bottom is also purple, which is why it's not like, it's not 100%. You don't have to follow it exactly, but it just makes things look simpler, and simpler usually looks better. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything to add about any of those three 60, 30, 10 rule of thumb in marketing? All right, so the last thing we are talking about is the 90-9-1 rule and the 1-9-90 rule. I'll start with the 90-9-1. So there's a 60-30-10 rule again, but that's in a pie chart. So you can see how much should be engaging content, how much should be shared, how much is promotional. All right. So the 90-9-1 rule of community engagement comes into play with your marketing and advertising, especially when trying to achieve certain goals or making educated estimates of how much you'll need to spend on ads to reach a certain goal that you're trying to do. Like, I need to get 1,000 customers. Well, how many people do I need to advertise to in order for that to happen based on this kind of general rule of thumb? The 99, this stuff comes from Membership Geeks. It's letter A in the syllabus. The video is the 90-9-1 rule of community engagement. So the 90-9-1 rule is a good rule of thumb for any kind of community and is for judging engagement. 90% of people in a community are lurkers. They read posts or they watch videos, they visit a website, but that's it. They don't get involved with anything. They don't post their own content. They don't really they might like a thing here or there or do a thumbs up, but they don't really go out of their way to share the content or comment on it, post something about it, or post within that community. They just look at other people's stuff and look at the if you have a YouTube channel, they're just watching the videos, but they don't like it. They're not subscribing maybe. Even if they're subscribed, all they do is watch the videos without sharing it with other people or getting other people involved or commenting a bunch or liking every video. They just watch it and that's it. Then 9% of people are active occasionally, making posts sometimes, commenting, sharing, liking. They do it all, but not all the time. They just do it every so often. Then the 1% of people are active, are active often. They create the most posts, they comment often, they check in multiple times a day, they share and continuously are actively engaged in those communities. So if you have 100 followers, but you've only ever seen comments from 10 of them, with one commenting on every post, then you have a pretty average amount of engagement based on this general rule of thumb. If you have 10,000 followers and only 10 engage with anything, then you may want to see how you can make your posts more engaging or maybe target a different audience because you're a lot lower than what this general rule of thumb implies. You would want to have about 100 people doing stuff actively if you have 10,000 followers. And then you want to have 1,000 people or 9,000, 900 people that are commenting and doing stuff every so often if you have 10,000 followers. If you have 10,000 followers and you only have 10 people that ever do anything on your sites or on your platform or anything, then it doesn't really matter to anybody that you have 10,000 followers. They care more about how active your community is. So if you have 10,000 people following an idea for a film, but they've never commented, they never shared, they never do anything. It doesn't mean anything to any investors or producers or whoever you try to get involved with the film, because those people probably aren't going to actually buy tickets. They're probably not going to spread the word about it. They're not very active of a community. That's why it's more important about how active they are than what the number of followers is that you have. If you look at the other side of the pyramid, it shows that 90% of the postings or 90% of the comments and shares and all that come from the 1% of those users. 10% of postings come from that 9%. And then there's no postings from 90% of users, because they're the lurkers. They don't do anything. They just watch it, look at it, and move along. Now, this second example breaks it down a bit further. And they talk about it being like the public, a friend, a fan, or a follower. So the general public, they're in it, but they're not really doing much. A friend, a fan, or a follower, they're kind of just in it because they like you, but they're not really involved with whatever that community is. A subscriber, something like to a newsletter or to YouTube videos. It doesn't mean they're commenting on everything. It just means they're there to see it pop up in their notifications always, and probably are going to watch it more often. Not really sure what prospect would be, but let's say they're the ones who maybe comment every here and there. Then you have a customer or a member, and that would be people who actually are involved in the stuff, who buy the tickets to your movie, who are involved with everything, and probably comment on a lot of stuff. If you have a Reddit page, a subreddit, they're the ones commenting on all the posts. Your loyalists and your advocates, they're the ones that are spreading the word. Your loyalists are the ones who won't leave you unless you really give them a reason to. They're going to be with you forever. They're your really active fans. And they probably are, if you have a subreddit or something like that, they'd be the ones making the posts and getting the community involved in things and engaged. And then your advocates are the ones that would be going out of their way to get other people involved that aren't in the community. You know, they're advocating your content, they're advocating your film to other people, to their friends or their family, to people they don't know, because they just want to help share your product, your company, your community with whoever they can talk to about it. And so that kind of breaks it down a little bit more. This is, of course, further broken down in 3 segments, like the 99-1 rule is, but you can see how the same rules generally apply if we just made a few of them, like this is the 1%, this is the 30%, and this is the 9%, and this is the 90%. And we can see how it breaks down into like, okay, that's the people who don't really do anything. They're just there because they like it, or they're a friend or fan or a follower of yours, but they're not really going to get actively engaged with whatever you have going on. This next stuff comes from higherlogic.com. It's letter, I don't know. There it is, letter D in the syllabus. They state that they think the 99-1 rule needs some updating because they say it varies by the community size. From what they found that in a community of 5,000 or less, 33% are creators and contributors, 23% creators, and 10% responders. So there's a lot more of an active community with a smaller amount of people. 10,000 to 50,000 people in a community, they found that 20% of the members participate, and that 10% create and 10% respond. And then 50,000 plus communities, they found that 5% actively create, 5% respond, and the rest just kind of follow along and lurk. So the bigger the community gets, they start to see that like the less people will get actively engaged with it, while a smaller community, from what they've seen, from I don't know how like what their data is or how they did the research, but from what they say, the smaller the community is, the more actively engaged you have more people for whatever reason. So just take that as you will. I don't know. It still kind of follows the same thing, I would say. It just means that there's going to be a lot less people that are actually posting, actually talking to people, actually buying tickets, actually sharing what you're trying to get them to share, compared to just the amount of people you have that see your posts or that follow you. Because not everybody's going to be as engaged with your stuff. And so it's the main thing I take away from it is that you need to be aware that the more actively engaged your community is, the more you have a leverage when you're trying to go to investors, when you're trying to pitch to people, because you're like, look, I have all these people that are very involved with what I do. Every single thing I have 500 people that follow me, but 300 are always watching my videos. 300 are always liking my posts. 200 are always commenting. You know, however many are active, that means that you get a really active number of community members. That is a far better pitch than, oh, I have 10,000 people subscribed to my YouTube channel and they see your videos, they only have a few hundred each. Why is that? Why is not more of that 10,000 watching each of your videos? You don't really have that active of a community. But higherlogic.com, they say, while that makes the 10%, they say that while that the 5% that are actively creating and 5% that are responding make up that 10% that engage, it's not as low as 1% that actively engage in any sized community. So they say the 99-1 rule isn't really real because there's no community where only 1% is very actively engaged. It's usually a higher number than that. So community engagement is much higher than commonly thought. But personally, I would say that really depends on the community, because I've been in some where it's mainly the same few commenting or posting. And then I've been in others where it's like over 50% are actively taking part. It just depends on how passionate they are about whatever the subject matter is or whatever the community is about. But I would say taking these metrics, you can use it to find how active your community is. And that can be, like I said, a good marketing element for you if you have a higher than average active community. And of course, the numbers will never be exact, but they are good to try to see if you should make more engaging content or how you might get people more active in the community. So like I said, if you have a ton of people, but nobody's really doing anything, why is that? Maybe your content isn't engaging. Maybe you're doing something wrong that you could do better and get more people engaged, or maybe you just don't have the right community. Somebody saw one of your videos or one of your posts and they thought that they would like your content, but that one post that they decided to follow you for or decided to subscribe to you for was kind of different than the rest of your content that you make. And so they don't actually like all your content. They just like that one thing you did. It'd be like getting a whole band's album because you like one of the songs, and that's the one song that's different from the rest of the album. And it's like, oh, I don't really like them. I just like that one song they did. It's kind of the same thing. And you want people to be more actively engaged with all of your stuff. You want them to like your whole album if you're a band. So see if you need to target new people. You need to figure out a different audience or a different tactic to get different people involved. If not, if you feel like you have the right audience, then maybe you're just not making content that they can engage with. You're not asking questions. You're not doing something that evokes thought and evokes a response. It's just something that they look at and move on. And so you want to change that in some way or form to try to get them interested in whatever it is that you're trying to talk about. All right, moving on from that, we have the 1-9-90% rule. And that is for influencer marketing. So that would be 1% being the influencers, the celebrity or the influencer that promotes it. So when you're doing influencer marketing, you're trying to you're either paying or convincing somebody that has a following to promote your stuff, your content, your work, your film, whatever, your brand. And once they do that, they say this is the general rule of thumb of how it flows down to everyone else. So first it's the celebrity or the influencer, the main influencer that spreads the news, that promotes your work. The 9% then that watch it, out of the whole audience, 9% is promoters and content creators that talk about what the influencer or that celebrity said. So 1% sends it out, 9% of the whole entire 100% of people that see it, 9% of them might see that one person talking about it and want to further discuss it or further talk about it, or make posts or make videos or something talking about that or promoting it further. And then 90% is everyone else that was hearing from the influencer or the various promoters and content creators. So 1% was the influencer, 9% small time influencers with a smaller audience, and 90% the lurkers. So with this, you can see that with influencer marketing, sometimes it's better, instead of targeting the 90%, instead of trying to get the 90% involved, you might just want to target the 1 and the 9% because they'll get the message out to the 90% quicker. And so that's like, sometimes you don't do influencer marketing where you pay the influencer. Sometimes you do influencer marketing where you try to market for the influencer. You market it to them. You try to get them involved, get them to like whatever it is. If it's an influencer who fits your target audience, you might try to market them your film just to get them to talk about it, instead of actually like making a contract with them and paying them. Depending on the influencer, they might just talk about it because they saw it and thought it was interesting. And then they'll get it out, which might get it to the 9%, which are smaller time creators. Maybe they talk about certain kinds of films or certain independent films, and they get it out to their smaller audiences. But combined, all those smaller audiences combined make up that 90% of people who aren't going to make any content, who aren't going to do anything, and just basically the general public who saw the post or read the review or watched the video. And so sometimes it's actually better to target the 1% and the 9% so that they can get it out to everyone else, instead of going the other way around and trying to target the 90%, because they might not see your posts because they only watch this person, or they only watch this guy or this girl on social media, or they only follow them or whatever. And if they're talking about it, then it might reach them. I've already talked about influencer marketing, so I'm not going to go into much more detail than that, but that's basically what influencer marketing is. You just get one person to spread the news to more people who then further spread the news to everyone else, and the general public's more aware of it. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything to add about the 99-1 rule of community engagement or the 1-9-90 rule of influencer marketing? All right, that's all for tonight. I'm just going to remind everybody that we have the 2 exercises. That it's the website creation exercise and the script analysis exercise. Those are both due December 1st. We will not be having a meeting on Monday next week because it's Halloween. So enjoy your Halloween, enjoy your
Lots of
weekend.
candy, get a bunch of cavities.
No, don't do that. Don't get cavities.
No.
But the next meeting we have is going to be on Tuesday, and it's going to be, we're going to watch another film. The film is called The Honeymoon Phase.
It's another independent film.
It's another independent film
cool.
that made their money back or were successful and actually made a profit. And so we're going to do what we did last time and look through
Learn a little bit about it.
what they
made them
did,
successful.
what their website looks like, and kind of get a hint of how they were successful and what they did right, as well as maybe what they could have done better, like we talked about last time. But does anybody else have anything to add or anything before we say goodnight?
I don't think so. I just want chocolate.
All right, guys, have a good weekend. Have a good night.
All right. Cool. Good
Night,
night,
everyone.
guys.
All right, see you guys on Tuesday.
Cool. All right.
Woohoo.